This is Radio Taiwan International. Welcome to the news on Radio Taiwan International. I'm Michelle Chang coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan. We begin with a look at today's top stories for Friday, June 3rd. China's ethnic unity law is a tool for, quote, forced unification, end quote, according to the Mainland Affairs Council. Causeway Bay Books manager Wing-kee has died at age 70. And China has expanded export controls against Japan. But first, today's top story. Yesterday, July 2nd, the Mainland Affairs Council discussed countermeasures against China's new ethnic unity law. RTI reporter James Thompson has the story.
Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, MAC, said on Thursday, July 2nd, that countermeasures against China's new ethnic unity law are under interministerial discussion. The agency described the Law on Promoting Ethnic Unity and Progress, which took effect the day before, as a tool for forced unification and transnational repression. Our countermeasures are currently being discussed across ministries, said MAC Deputy Minister Liang Wenjie at a press briefing in Taipei. In a statement, MAC said the law was effectively a unification law that imposes legal obligations on Taiwanese to safeguard ethnic unity and promote unification. It said the government would strengthen public awareness, civil servant training, administrative reviews, assistance and protection mechanisms, and cooperation with democratic partners to oppose this transnational repression. The law has also drawn international criticism. Reuters reported Thursday that the European Union expressed concern over the law's extraterritorial application, while US lawmakers said Wednesday that it gives Beijing, quote, near limitless authority to prosecute those who would speak out against Beijing's oppression. Liang said the law gives Beijing an additional legal weapon. But in substance, even without this law, it does many of the same things anyway, he said. This is James Thompson with Radio Taiwan International, reporting in Taipei.
Causeway Bay Books manager Wing-kee passed away at the age of 70 on the evening of Thursday, June 2nd at MacKay Memorial Hospital in Taipei, following a recurrence of cancer. Lam was an active participant in Hong Kong public life, standing firmly in support of democracy and freedom. Causeway Bay Books was a bookstore in Hong Kong popular with Chinese tourists looking for political publications not available in China. In late 2015, Lam and other staff members went missing. A few months later, Guangdong provincial authorities revealed he had been detained in China. Lam eventually returned to Hong Kong and relocated to Taiwan in 2019, where he reopened the iconic bookstore. In a social media post on Thursday evening, President Lai Ching-te extended condolences to Lam's family, friends, and all those who care about freedom and democracy in Hong Kong. Lai noted that Lam's life bore witness to the preciousness of freedom of speech and that he had endured the fear and pain of authoritarian repression, yet refused to stay silent. He chose to reopen Causeway Bay Books in Taiwan, making it a place where Hong Kongers could gather to speak out and support one another. Lai said the courage Lam leaves behind will not disappear. Taiwan will remember the steadfast Hong Kong bookseller who showed Taiwanese people how precious freedom is and reminded them that democracy must be defended generation after generation. China has expanded export controls against Japan by blacklisting 20 more defense-related companies and institutions while placing another 20 on a watch list.
China has once again expanded export controls against Japan, blacklisting another 20 Japanese companies and organizations as tensions between the two countries continue to rise over security and Taiwan-related issues. China's Ministry of Commerce announced on June 29 that the newly listed entities are prohibited from receiving Chinese dual-use goods, that's products and technologies with both civilian and military applications. The measures also require Chinese exporters to obtain additional approvals and submit risk assessments before shipments to another group of designated Japanese entities can proceed. The latest blacklist includes Japan's National Institute for Defense Studies, the Ground Systems Research Centers, the Air Systems Research Center, the Naval Systems Research Center, and several subsidiaries of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Mitsubishi Electric. Japan strongly condemned the move. Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara called the measures unacceptable and demanded that Beijing withdraw the restrictions, adding that the government is assessing their potential impact on Japanese businesses and supply chains. The latest actions follow months of growing friction between Japan and Tokyo. China has steadily tightened export controls since Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi suggested last year that Japan could respond militarily in the event of a Taiwan contingency. Tokyo has also strengthened defense cooperation with regional partners, including the Philippines. Chinese officials say the measures are intended to curb what Beijing describes as Japan's new militarism. Including an earlier round of restrictions announced in February, China has now placed 80 Japanese companies and institutions under export controls or enhanced monitoring, underscoring how strategic competition between the two countries is increasingly extending into technology, supply chains, and economic security. Joey Cho for RTI News.
Lawmakers submitted 3 bills to the legislature's Finance, Economics, and Foreign Affairs and National Defense Committees for review as legislators grapple with Taiwan's drone defense budgets. The bills are essentially each party's revised version of the cabinet's drone procurement bill, alongside the original proposed together for comparative review. On June 18th, the cabinet passed a draft special act on the procurement of indigenous unmanned defense systems, which had a budget cap of 210 billion NT dollars or $6.5 billion US dollars. However, last week, on June 26th, opposition lawmakers stalled the bill and instead proposed annual budget allocations. On Tuesday, the KMT and TPP opposition caucuses each submitted their own versions of the drone regulations. The KMT draft would allocate 240 billion NT dollars or $7.5 billion US dollars total over 6 years, with 40 billion NT dollars or over $1.2 billion US dollars allocated annually from the government budget. The TPP's draft has no cap, but would require the executive branch to secure a budget through annual procurement from the general budget. The TPP version also proposes that the cabinet establish a legislative committee to submit and review drone industry development guidelines at regular intervals. At the legislature this morning, both ruling and opposition parties agreed to send the KMT and TPP draft bills to committees for review. There it will be compared to the cabinet's and DPP versions of the bill. While all bills support buying drones and developing Taiwan's domestic drone industry, they disagree about where to source project funding. The DPP and cabinet have proposed funding projects through the use of special budget bills, believing this would be a more stable way to fund industry development for the next 6 years. The KMT and TPP argue that funds should be granted through annual general budget appropriations to reduce the risk of corruption and better monitor fiscal discipline. The Central Weather Administration, or CWA, announced that Typhoon Bavi intensified into a moderate typhoon early Friday. It is expected to continue strengthening as it moves closer towards Taiwan, possibly approaching the island this coming Thursday, July 9th. The CWA is closely monitoring the situation for updates. Meteorologist Wu Derong noted that current models predict Typhoon Bavi will approach Taiwan next week, with the most severe effects possibly felt on Friday and Saturday, July 10th and 11th. However, which areas of Taiwan will be most affected will depend on the exact path of the storm and require further monitoring. As of the afternoon of July 3rd, the storm is located east of Guam and is expected to strengthen into a severe typhoon overnight. If Bavi maintains its current trajectory, Wu says that the storm will reach waters southeast of the Ryukyu Islands early next Wednesday, July 8th. Current simulations show the typhoon continuing its northwest path into the waters east of Taiwan. However, due to the long period of time and Bavi's expected intensification over that period, it is difficult to say whether the storm will stay on its current course. President Lai Ching-te spoke at the opening ceremony and purchased supplies for his own dogs at the country's largest pet supplies exhibition on Friday, July 3rd. Lai stated that Taiwan is gradually building diversified industry chains, which include pet supplies and care. The president explained that as his grandfather and uncles owned dogs when he was young, he naturally became a dog lover by playing with them. In addition to supporting the pet supplies exhibition and industry development in his presidential capacity, he also purchased supplies for his dogs Murphy and Banban. He jokingly added that he often receives gifts from former President Tsai Ing-wen and Vice President Xiao Bi-kim, so today he also wanted to buy supplies for their pets to return their sentiments. Lai pointed out that cat and dog ownership is becoming increasingly common in society, totaling 3.2 million registered pets. This year, the number of cat owners has surpassed that of dogs, and this trend is expected to continue, with related industries already reaching a value of approximately 80 billion NT dollars or over 2.5 billion US dollars. This year's expo features 480 vendors and 2,100 booths, a much larger event than last year. Thanks for joining me for the news. I'm Michelle Chang. Stay tuned for another 50 minutes of English language features brought to you by Radio Taiwan International.